when a situation seems to arise apropos of nothing, deaths can feel all the more jarring. And when those deaths are those of children, the situation is amplified. And a third layer of disbelief comes when the killer of the defenseless younglings is the mother. The situation shatters all we thought we knew about life, maternal instincts, and the protection of some of our society's most vulnerable. In these very, very rare situations, there are generally reasons for the abhorrent actions that have happened. And when they involve fragile mental health, we are left with questions about who could have helped, why wasn't more done, and whether there were failings, and if, as usual, lessons need to be learned. So with a trigger warning about deaths of young children. This is the case of Clancy in Massachusetts just last year. And this is Murder of Crows. For this tragic case, we're going to Duxbury, Massachusetts, to look at a family with 3 young children. And this family were gearing up for the mother in this family unit, 32-year-old Clancy, to return to work at Massachusetts General Hospital as a delivery nurse, some 8 months after the birth of the family's youngest child, a baby boy named Callan. Returning to work after maternity leave can be an emotional wrench, and Lindsay's case was no exception. But her concerns were compounded by ongoing mental health struggles that were making her anxieties much more than the usual concerns felt by mothers the world over. Lindsay's husband Patrick was extremely supportive of his wife, and was supporting her to in turn get any support that she felt she needed. As part of her ongoing struggles, she would journal her inner feelings and concerns, which gives a rare insight into what was going on in the mind of the young mother as things progressed towards the heartbreaking events of January the 24th, 2023. As such, for this story, I will be focusing largely on the events from around 2022, and in particular late 2022 onwards, focusing not only on Lindsay's struggles, but also the steps that she and Patrick took to ensure that she had all the help that she needed, so we could try to perhaps work out where things could have maybe fallen through the cracks leading to the tragedy, as we try to work out if it was in any way avoidable. We will begin at around the end of September 2022, as Lindsay Clancy, realising that her maternity leave was going to be ending soon, was becoming anxious. And so much so that she actually visited 2 different psychiatrists, and she ended up being diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. She was prescribed medication, but as is normal for new diagnoses of this type, it can take time to find the right medication or combination of medications for any given individual. As a result of this process, Lindsay was prescribed no less than 13 different medications in different combinations between October and January to treat anxiety, insomnia and depression. And those medications were Zolpidem, the brand name being Ambien, clonazepam under the brand name Klonopin, diazepam under the brand name Valium, fluoxetine under the brand name Prozac, lamotrigine under the brand name Lamictal, lorazepam under the brand name Ativan, mirtazapine under the brand name Remeron, quetiapine fumarate under the brand name Seroquel, sertraline under its brand name of Zoloft, trazodone, hydroxyzine, amitriptyline and buspirone. And Lindsay would be taking up to 4 of these at any one time per day, but she only ever used them as prescribed. In late October 2022, Lindsay makes a note on her phone regarding her concerns around her children. But it is only with hindsight that this seems more ominous than perhaps it appears on the surface. With the note reading, "I think I sort of resent my other children because they prevent me from treating Cal like my first baby. And I know that's not fair to them. I know that. I was feeling so depressed last evening when Cora and Dawson came home from school. I know it runs off on them, so we had a pretty rough evening. I want to feel love and connection with all of my kids." Now, things seemed to become more acute around Christmas of 2022, with Lindsay being evaluated at the Women and Infants Hospital Centre for Women's Behavioural Health in Providence. Here she was told that she was showing no symptoms of postpartum depression, or what is called postnatal depression in the UK, and so was not, according to the powers that be, suffering from it. But things did not improve, with Lindsay reporting having suicidal thoughts as well as thoughts about hurting her children at the end of December 2022. This led to Lindsay admitting herself to McLean Hospital in Belmont on the 1st of January 2023. And this psychiatric hospital discharged her on January the 5th without any indication that she may be a danger to herself or to others. Following this, things appeared to settle down somewhat, with Patrick actually asking Lindsay outright about her mental state around the middle of January 2023. Patrick Clancy asks his wife if she's still having suicidal thoughts, and she tells him that she isn't. Patrick still has concerns though, and later that month Patrick asked the doctor treating his wife to help manage her medications. He went to doctors repeatedly saying, "Please help us," and referring to the medication said that this was turning her into a zombie, and the medications that were prescribed were over the top. On January the 22nd, a family friend named Kyle Carney invited Patrick, Lindsay, and the two older children, Cora and Dawson, over for dinner. Now, Carney would later tell the police that he had not expected Lindsay to come because of her depression, and he had not seen her for months, but she did attend the dinner. And according to him, Lindsay seemed fairly normal that evening, but Patrick said that she was suffering from benzodiazepine withdrawal and had the worst side effects from that possible. Patrick also said at this dinner that Lindsay had been having anxiety about returning to work, and that the medications she was prescribed were not working. Lindsay's family also came to visit her and the family that weekend. On January the 23rd, Lindsay wrote a note on her phone that said that she has a touch of postpartum anxiety about returning to work. None of the notes that Lindsay had written, even though indicating her anxiety and low mood, gave any indication of any delusions or hallucinations that she was suffering up to this point. January the 24th, 2023 started in a pretty normal way. Lindsay took 5-year-old Cora to a scheduled doctor's appointment. When they returned home, they played in the snow that happened to be lying on the ground with Cora's brother Dawson, who was 3, and Lindsay sent pictures of the children making snowmen to her mother and also to Patrick. After this, at around 4 p.m, Lindsay searched online for Miralax, which is a children's gentle laxative medication. and this may have been related to Cora's earlier medical appointment that day. She also searched for 3V takeout, which is a reference to a restaurant called 3V in nearby Plymouth that she was considering ordering from for that evening. Now this was peculiar since the restaurant was some distance from their Duxbury home, with Lindsay actually accessing Apple Maps to see how long it would take to drive there. She later asked Patrick by text if they could order from there, and he agreed. Lindsay also telephoned the CVS pharmacy in nearby Kingston to see if they had the Miralax children's medication that she had searched for earlier in stock at the moment, with the manager of the store saying no, they didn't have that particular one, but they did have similar medications for children. The manager later said nothing seemed out of the ordinary about the call, and that Lindsay was not slurring or did not seem impaired in any way. Lindsay made a note of the alternative medications they did hold, and then contacted Patrick by text, asking him to pick something from the 3V menu, and she would then call them with an order. And shortly afterwards, Lindsay called 3V to place their order, a Mediterranean power bowl, whatever the fuck that is for Lindsay, and the scallop and pork belly risotto for Patrick. There was no reports here of her being impaired either. She then texts Patrick with the name of an alternative gentle laxative medication for children, something called Pedialax liquid stool softener, and Patrick said he would pick that up from CVS en route to picking up their takeout dinner. Everything so far seeming rosy and lovely. At just past 5:30, Patrick arrived at CVS in Kingston, where he called Lindsay to confirm the name of the medication that they needed. She didn't answer, but did call him back about a minute later, with Patrick later telling the police that Lindsay seemed like she was in the middle of something when they spoke. About 20 minutes later, Patrick picked up their dinner order and began the roughly half-an-hour journey back home to Duxbury. At about 6:10, Patrick arrives home, and the first thing he noticed was the silence. He did not see or hear his wife or the children. He called for his wife, but there was no answer. He then went to their second-floor bedroom and found the door locked. Patrick eventually got into the bedroom, where he found blood on the floor and an open window. He immediately rushed outside and saw his wife on the ground, severely injured. Patrick called 911 to report Lindsay's what seemed to be attempted suicide, and Lindsay could be heard in the background of the phone call saying, "I tried to kill myself and jumped out the window." And in the audio recording of the call, a dispatcher could be heard saying, a female party jumped off the top floor of the house. Impact injury, neck lacerations. She is conscious at this time. It was over a 20-foot fall.
Quick fire dispatch engine 2 car 3A147 47 Summers Street, respond with the police. The whole party jumped off the top floor of the house, slice her wrist as well, and neck injuries, neck laceration. She's conscious at this time. We're going to check with med flight. It was over a 20-foot fall.
Also during the 911 call, Patrick asked Lindsay, "Where are the kids?" And she replied, "In the basement." And while on the phone with the dispatcher, Patrick went down to the basement and called out for the children. He was then heard screaming in agony. Cora and Callan were found on the floor of the den, and Dawson was found on the floor of Patrick's home office. Each child had an exercise band tied around their necks. Patrick removed the bands and begged for them to breathe. Once officers arrived in the basement, Patrick screamed, "She killed the kids." Lindsay was transported to South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, where she was treated for several broken bones in her back and rib cage. The injuries left her paralysed below the waist. The children were transported to the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Plymouth. Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead at the hospital. Callan, the 8-month-old baby boy, was clinging to life and was later transported by medical flight to the Boston Children's Hospital. A Massachusetts State Police trooper arrived at Beth Israel and spoke to the doctors who had treated Cora, Dawson and Callan. The doctor who treated Callan during his medical flight said that the little boy was in critical condition. The next day, on January the 25th, 2023, an arrest warrant was issued for Lindsay for 2 counts of homicide and 3 counts of strangulation, along with 3 counts of assault and battery with a deadly weapon. Is an exercise band a deadly weapon? I don't know, but that's what happened anyway. Then on January the 27th, 2023 at 11:18 a.m., 8-month-old Callan Clancy was pronounced dead at Boston Children's Hospital. It was later revealed that while the medical staff were able to restart Callan's heart, his brain activity was never recovered following the strangulation, and he ultimately succumbed to his devastating injuries. Later that day, Lindsay awoke and used a whiteboard to communicate while she was still intubated and unable to speak. One of her first questions was, "Do I need an attorney?" The next day, almost unbelievably, Patrick Clancy asked the public to forgive Lindsay because I have. A few days later, Lindsay makes clear what happened from her point of view. She called her husband in the presence of a psychologist, and she told Patrick that after he left the home on January the 24th, she heard voices and had a moment of psychosis. Patrick asked her what voices she had heard, and she said that she heard a man's voice telling her to kill the kids and kill herself because it was her last chance. On February the 7th, 2023, it was the day of Lindsay's arraignment, with her lawyer saying that she was still suicidal, with him quoted as saying she's extremely emotional. However, she has been unable to express any happiness or sadness or to cry, he said in court, while the still extremely unwell and injured Lindsay appeared via video link.
Your Honor, we are here on docket 2359 CR 0153. It's the Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy.
Thank you very much. Could I have counsel for the Commonwealth or counsels identify themselves for the record?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Jennifer Spade for the Commonwealth.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Amanda Fowler for the Commonwealth.
Could I have counsel for Ms. Clancy identify himself for the record?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Kevin Reddington. I represent Lindsay Clancy, who is appearing by Zoom, as I understand.
Okay, very good. I can see Ms. Clancy on the Zoom line. In this matter, this arraignment is being conducted at the assent of the parties, with Ms. Clancy participating from the hospital that she is in. This is done to ensure, and it's on Zoom, that the public has as much access as possible to court business. It also ensures any privacy rights of people doing business at the hospital and helps the hospital in dealing with what they need to deal with on a daily basis. And both sides have assented to doing the arraignment this way. At this point in time, there is court staff that is at the hospital. Mr. Jackson, can you hear me? And is Ms. Clancy in a position that the two of you can hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Clancy, at any point in time, if you needed to speak to your attorney, you can indicate that you'd like to speak to your attorney, and we can make arrangements to go off record where you would be able to have a private call with your attorney if that became necessary.
Thank you. A community in mourning right now in Duxbury. People gathered to remember the young lives lost earlier this week.
Yeah, their mother is charged with their murder and charged with hurting their younger brother, who right now, that infant, is fighting for his life in the hospital. NBC 10's Oscar Margame live in Duxbury this morning. Oscar, this entire community grieving together, trying to make sense of what happened.
Yes, and for those who showed up to the vigil here last night, it was a cathartic moment, an opportunity to come together, pray for the Clancy family and for first responders. Dozens filling the Holy Family Church in a candlelight vigil Thursday night in Duxbury, as people of all ages and backgrounds, whether it be parents, children, first responders, sought the comfort of prayer.
Everybody needs to come together, and this is a community that supports everyone.
This is another day goes by without the lives of two young children, Cora and Dawson Clancy, who were allegedly killed by their mother, 32-year-old Lindsay Clancy, at their home on Tuesday. Prosecutors say she strangled them and her 8-month-old baby boy, who survived and is now fighting for his life at a Boston hospital. Sources telling NBC 10 Lindsay is suffering from postpartum depression and tried killing herself. One vigil goer telling us how difficult it's been for her son, a young firefighter who first responded to the scene.
All you can do is just be there for your first responders. You know, some people say that those first responders know how to process things like this. They don't. They're human, just like everybody else.
And the Duxbury fire chief extending counseling services not just to his own firefighters, but first responders across the area. Now, Lindsay Clancy remains at a hospital under police watch. Reporting live in Duxbury, Oscar Margain, NBC 10 Boston.
Oscar, thank you. After seeing Oscar's story, it's an important reminder here. There's a new National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health hotline available, 988. Anyone facing a mental health crisis can call or text that number to get free and confidential emotional support. And for vets, they can call or text 988 and then press the number 1 to contact the Veterans Crisis Line.
Was revealed in the case of a Duxbury mother accused of killing her children. Yesterday, Lindsay Clancy was arraigned from her hospital bed. NBC 10's Lauren Melendez live for us in Plymouth with the latest on this tragedy. Hey, Lauren, good morning.
Hey, Colton, good morning. Listen, despite a lot of those details, there's still significant questions this morning. Was it calculated? Were her actions a cry for help? Now, we have more information leading up to the days Lindsay Clancy was accused of killing her children, but it was still very clear in court that there is somewhat of a divide in terms of whether or not she should be in jail.
In the months, weeks, and days preceding January 24th, 2023, the defendant meticulously detailed her daily activities, her children's lives, her mental state, and her medication use.
In court, the Plymouth County Assistant DA completely dismantles arguments that 32-year-old Lindsay Clancy was mentally or emotionally unstable when deciding to strangle her children with exercise bands, instead painting her as clear, precise, and articulate. The polar opposite of how Clancy's lawyer describes her, illustrating a mentally fragile, exhausted mother of 3 whose postpartum psychosis was ignored by pill-pushing doctors.
Our medical in our society completely abandons women with this condition. It's easy to say, come on, you have a healthy baby. You have a wonderful husband. You're able to take care of your kids in your home. You're lucky. Take the pills, you'll be okay.
Ultimately, a judge agreed with her lawyer's arguments that Clancy's inconsistent bill of health and recent paralysis from jumping out a second-story window during a suicide attempt did not make her a flight risk. And for now, jail is off the table.
The defendant shall continue to receive mental health treatment while hospitalized.
So Clancy still faces 2 murder charges, but again, instead of jail, the judge has ordered that she stay in the hospital, then she'll move to rehab and ultimately be confined to her home. We are live in Plymouth this morning. I'm Lauren Melendez, NBC 10 Boston.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much for that reporting there.
Lindsay entered a plea of not guilty and was continued to be held at the hospital without bail. Her next court date was originally scheduled for May the 2nd. But when that date rolled around, Lindsay was actually in the process of being transferred to a different hospital. She was transferred to Tewkesbury State Hospital for more specialist mental health care. So that court date was postponed. She was indicted by a grand jury on September the 15th, 2023, on 3 counts of murder and strangulation for the deaths of Cora, aged 5, Dawson, aged 3, and Callan, aged 8 months. In a hearing held on January the 17th, 2024, almost a year after the tragic events, Lindsay Clancy's attorney, Kevin Reddington, entered a not guilty plea on her behalf. He told the court that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from severe postpartum depression or psychosis and was over-medicated at the time of the children's deaths. Over the previous months and throughout 2023, Reddington had successfully argued on Lindsay Clancy's behalf that his client should remain hospitalized because she had suffered a spinal cord injury and was left paralyzed when she leapt out of the window. He also pointed out that doctors wanted her to get further mental health treatment. The prosecution did not object to keeping Lindsay Clancy in the hospital.
New developments in the case of Lindsay Clancy. She's the Duxbury woman accused of killing her 3 children earlier this year before trying to kill herself. NBC 10's Monica Medea is live in the newsroom with an update on what has been a disturbing case. Monica.
JC, absolutely. This case is absolutely tragic. And now a Plymouth County grand jury has decided to indict Clancy on charges she killed her children. The county's district attorney made the announcement just a few hours ago. Now, these charges are separate from the ones Clancy faced in district court, which were filed in the days after the murders took place. Clancy has not been in jail. She's been receiving treatment at Tewksbury Hospital. Police say she killed her children after she attempted to kill herself. The judge ruled that she be held at the hospital on Section 18. That allows the state to put any prisoner considered mentally ill or under duress in doctor's custody. She was ordered to remain there until the beginning of November. Clancy's 3 children were found dead inside a Summer Street home the evening of January 24th. Now, police originally got a call about a suicide attempt as Clancy is believed to have jumped out of a window. When officers got there, the children's bodies were found. All had been strangled. Clancy is expected to be arraigned on her charges at a later date. We'll keep you posted. Back to you.
Just released provide new details in the case against the Duxbury mother charged with murdering her 3 children earlier this year.
Lindsay Clancy has been in a Tewksbury hospital since the killings. She will be arraigned in that town on Thursday. And tonight, NBC 10's Michael Rosenfield joining us live from Tewksbury with more on the nearly 300-page document. Michael, what'd you learn?
Yeah, Priscilla, we learned a lot more information about this case today. About 300 pages of court documents have now been unsealed. Prosecutors Tuesday unsealing a search warrant application that revealed new details in their case against Lindsay Clancy, the Duxbury mother accused of killing her 3 children. It happened at the family's home in January. Clancy then slit her wrists and neck before she jumped out a window, according to prosecutors. The newly released documents reveal that her husband Patrick told investigators she had been having suicidal thoughts as well as thoughts of hurting the children in December. Journals obtained from the Clancy home show that Lindsay had been listing the medications she was taking and noting suicidal expressions and thoughts she was having, and investigators also allege she researched ways to kill. According to the warrant application, her husband told investigators that months earlier she'd been anxious about returning to work as a labor and delivery nurse. We've also learned that 2 nights before the crimes, the couple had been at another couple's home for dinner, and those friends told investigators, quote, Lindsay seemed fairly normal, mostly quiet, while on her phone and keeping to herself. Patrick Clancy coming home on January 24th to find the children with exercise bands around their necks and telling arriving police officers, quote, she killed the kids. Lindsay has already entered a plea of not guilty at her initial court appearance. Her attorney has blamed postpartum depression for the crimes. So Lindsay Clancy will be arraigned again later this week as this case moves to Superior Court. It'll actually take place here at Tewksbury Hospital, where she's currently being treated. Live in Tewksbury tonight, Michael Rosenfield, NBC 10 Boston.
Lindsay remained hospitalized at various facilities and had been since the killings. One of the most recent updates, as the legal teams were trawling through hundreds and hundreds of pages of information, mainly centering on previous and ongoing medical issues, came in July of this year, and it was thought at that time that progress towards an actual court trial could be forthcoming. A brief status update on the case was held in Brockton Superior Court on Friday, July the 26th, 2024. During that hearing, Plymouth County Assistant District Attorney Amanda Fowle updated Judge William Sullivan on the status of a pending DNA test of a cheek swab taken from Lindsay Clancy several months earlier. Whether there was any specific purpose behind the swab other than general evidence collecting was not revealed previously nor at that time. Fowle said that the state DNA testing lab has the sample in its queue, but she noted that the wait line was long. During the last court date in May, the wait time then was estimated at 3 to 6 months. Both Fowle and Lindsay Clancy's attorney Kevin Reddington said other elements of the case were progressing to the point where setting a trial date may be on the horizon. And the next case update is scheduled for Friday, September the 27th, 2024. And the number of delays and massive piles of evidence on both sides gives an indication of how complex this case actually is legally, showing that it may not be as perhaps cut and dry as it first appeared. What happened is not in any doubt, but the question of why is the one that is opening up a huge grey area, including whether there was a psychotic episode, what form that episode took, and whether such an episode would impact on Lindsay Clancy's culpability as it is defined by law. But beyond the legal aspects of this very complicated case, there are still 3 dead young children that should not be forgotten. And it was with that in mind that Patrick Clancy completed the Boston Marathon in just under 4 hours on Monday the 15th of April of this year, and raised more than $75,000 for Boston Children's Hospital in honor of his 3 children. I love my kids, they're wonderful people, Patrick was quoted as saying as he crossed the finish line. He went on to say, everybody loved them. They had short lives, but they had good lives. Patrick wore a bright blue and orange checkered Miles for Miracles jersey, and on the back it read in handwritten letters, in memory of Cora, Dawson and Callan, every mile, every day. It was his first marathon, and he explained the training for the big event became therapy for him after the tragedy, with Patrick saying, they were my motivation. It was therapeutic. It was purpose. I knew we could make a big difference, and we did. So it was good. While running the course, the crowd cheered his name despite it not being on his shirt, and encouraged him to keep going. But their cheers weren't the only thing keeping Patrick Clancy going. So were the mementos of his children that he carried with him every step of the way. He wore a tiny blue bow pinned to his left shoulder that had belonged to his daughter Cora. He also wore a Happy Callan bracelet and another bracelet that was representative of Dawson. The father of three also carried resins with his children's handprints on it that Boston Children's Hospital, where Callan had died days after the attack, had given him following the tragedy. Patrick raised $77,062 for the hospital as part of its Miles for Miracle team, exceeding his goal of $65,000. And Patrick also reiterated that he had forgiven his wife, Lindsay Clancy. So as we wait for the legal process to run its course, most likely ending with Lindsay remaining permanently hospitalized with a focus on mental health treatment, we are left to grapple with the questions of whether there was any way to prevent this tragedy, or whether there were any missed signs that it may have been coming. There appeared to have been no indications of an imminent mental health crisis, but there had been long-standing incidences of Lindsay asking for help. Whatever the truth of what happened to the three children, and indeed to Lindsay herself, three young lives have been lost, and Lindsay's life obviously forever changed. Not to mention the ripple effects that the deaths within this family have wrought on the friends and family of the Clancys. I will update you on further progress as and when it happens, but for now I dedicate this video to the three little angels caught in the middle of a devastating tragedy. I truly hope they are at peace and that they are together. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm Steve. This lap lump is Samson. You are, aren't you? Yes, you are. And we will see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready.